Good to see you guys again on another Tuesday. First question. What would you say is the most common misconception about real love, or the most dangerous? I'm terrible with questions that start off with, what is your favorite? What is the most? What's your favorite color? I have no idea. What's your favorite ice cream? That's really hard because I can't think of one I don't like. Let's talk about some of them, though. A really common misconception about real love that I hear a lot is that it doesn't exist. Most people have never seen it. So if you've never seen a thing all your life, kind of like in the Middle Ages, nobody had ever seen a vitamin. So if you came along and described vitamins, they'd say, ridiculous. They'd been told that the world was flat all their lives. So somebody came along and said the world is round, and they just about executed him. We come to believe what we can see. If you've never seen it and somebody comes along and describes unconditional love, it's pretty natural to make the assumption that it doesn't exist. And once you've done that, because of your education and experience, you'll never recognize it. Even if it walked in front of you, and you'll certainly never find it. Another misconception, common one, is that real love would somehow make you a doormat. My answer to that's really simple. Anybody who knows me, do I seem like a doormat? No. So it doesn't. When people ask that question, what people are really saying is, I'm afraid that real love would make me weak, because loving is often seen as weaker than, say, anger. Somebody who is quietly compassionate often doesn't look as strong as somebody who is firing, say, a 50 caliber machine gun. But there's no comparison. None at all. I can train a monkey to shoot a 50 caliber machine gun. No insult to people whose job that is. But I can't train a monkey to be loving. So love's a good deal harder. What real love does is makes you unafraid. That's what it does. Which makes you far stronger. Makes you a lion among men. No kidding. It gives you vision. When we're afraid, we can't see anything. When we're loving, we can now see choices we never saw before. You can say yes to things you never thought possible. You can make choices you never thought possible. And you can say no to things you didn't want to do. So without real love, you actually feel obligated to people who make you feel guilty or manipulate you. You feel obligated to say yes. So real love's the very opposite of being a doormat. It gives you greater vision, more choices, makes you stronger. It's about as cool a thing as there is. One of the concerns or misconceptions about real love is that it might make you weird and you might lose some friends. And the answer is, yeah, you might. Pretty much the whole world is empty, afraid, in pain, blind. And if you're not, if you're the only sighted person in a room of 1,000 people, the blind people might find your observations of the room strange, because you're describing things like blue light. You're describing colors, shades. They don't see them. So they might find you weird and they might leave. But how much of a loss is that? So if somebody would leave you because you're unafraid and not blind anymore and feel powerful and loving, if somebody would leave you for being genuinely happy, that's really not a tough trade. And I've had people leave me in my life for changing. And it's understandable. We form our friendships based on who we were when we met them. And so there are a lot of people that I've known in my life with whom I have formed friendships based on a certain exchange of imitation love. When I changed my life and didn't exchange imitation love anymore, it's understandable that they just naturally and almost imperceptibly, quietly, like a whisper, they just leave the room and find other people. who will trade with them. Not hard to find them. So it's not like there's this great big falling out. Well, so you won't trade with me anymore. And no, they just go away and find the next person. Another common misconception is that, and this is really common among people who are investigating real love, is that it's some kind of magic solution. You read a book, you go to a meeting, and then boom, everything will be better. This is a particularly common misconception amongst victims. Victims, people who are afraid, people with personality disorders. These are people who've not been able to have successful relationships ever. And then here's this organization that says, or group of people, or website, or whatever, that says, we will unconditionally love you. And these people go, whoa, cool. So they walk in the room and just expect everybody to embrace them and, I guess, bibbity-bobbity-boo and wave their wand and their life will be different. And no, you actually have to do some work. You actually have to exercise faith and trust, and you have to tell the truth about yourself, and you have to find loving people, and you have to learn to be loving. So no, it's not a magic solution. Another misconception is that once we learn it, well, then it's our obligation to shove it down the throats of our family and friends. No, pretty much not. Very few people enjoy having anything shoved down their throat. So those are just a few that I could think of off the top of my head in the last couple of minutes. Here's a member who wrote and said, when we last spoke, you said, you fall over a lot. I actually didn't remember saying that, but I must have. And while I'm sure you didn't add the words more than other people, that's what I chose to hear. And I also added more than you should this far into your real love journey. More than is reasonable, given all the love that we've poured into you. So, wow, look at all the things you heard me say that I didn't say. Woof. When we're empty, when we're afraid, when we don't feel loved, we hear all kinds of stuff that other people don't say. You continue. Even though I knew you were loving me, just being there for me, taking my call, talking to me, I chose to hear what you said as a criticism. I decided to use it as a reason to hide more, rather than be a reason to be seen more, or to tell more truths, not less, to grow. So, of course, I'm falling over again now. When she says falling over, she just means screwing up, stumbling, making mistakes, hiding, being stupid, kind of like what we all do almost every day. Although this time, you continue, I've not attached it to any particular victim event. Well, kind of. You're kind of attaching it to the words I said, but you continue. I'm guessing that I chose not to learn something about myself this last time around, and that I've been trying to think my way to real love success rather than feeling it. As you said in a recent video chat, being in my head is hiding and protecting myself. No surprise to you that this is not going well. So right now, you're doing exactly what I was trying to communicate. You're living in fear. You're fearing my criticism. You're fearing everybody else's criticism. You're fearing your failure. So there are really only two ways to go here when you fail. First, you could face it and learn from it, which is really unfamiliar to you and unfamiliar to almost all of us. Or two, you could hide it, which you're really familiar with. Regrettably, you tend to hide and to blame whoever points out a mistake. And that feels both familiar and less painful for the moment, but it keeps you absolutely stuck. Actually, it really keeps you dead. I spend all day pointing out to people what they don't want to hear. And frankly, and I don't talk about this very often, sometimes I hate it. I do. Who wants to hear fear and disapproval and blaming all day, which is what I get for pointing out mistakes? If I wanted to make friends, all I'd have to do is spend all day saying, you're doing so well. You're such a moral hero. Wow, that is really great. And yes, your husband is an irretrievable, unmitigated SOB. I could just say that all day long and I would be elected president. Actually, come to think of it, that's happened before. It's much harder to point out the stuff people don't want to hear, but the stuff they need to hear. But I love you enough to point these things out anyway. If you could see that what I told you could really only be out of love, unless it was out of some sort of really profound sadistic impulse, it'd make all the difference in the world to you. You continue. I'm feeling low and empty and pointless, tearful like I've never known, feeling out of body even, but not in a good way. I have no idea who I am. I say I know I'm surrounded by all the unconditional love I could ever wish for, but as you say, saying it means squat. And I do remember saying that. It's feeling pointless. And I'm feeling worthless, and I'm not feeling loved. It's all because of your fear of looking stupid and of making mistakes and being bad, just like you feared when I made my comments to you and you took them as criticisms, that you were falling down. I was pointing out to you that you were falling down again only so you could see it, because you weren't. I get this every day. I point out to somebody that they're being whatever, making a mistake, selfish, unloving, and they get irritated and they say, well, why did you have to point it out in that way? Well, because I'd tried 5 subtle ways before that and you didn't hear any of them. So I finally just said, you're being selfish. I tried all the hints. And if you weren't doing it, why would I point it out? It just wouldn't make sense. We're having a perfectly lovely conversation, and then I just decide to pull out of the air what? You're an orangutan. No, I'm not going to make stuff up. I'm doing it for you. The fear is killing you. Until you can just make mistakes and learn from them, skipping all the unnecessary emotional pain and guilt and all that stuff, you'll stay stuck. It's so unnecessary, all that stuff you do to yourself. The guilt is all based on the lie that if you screw up, you'll be less worthwhile. So you are serving an unnecessary lie instead of being given life by the truth and love. Dumb choice. Notice the tone of voice. Not stupid choice, you stupid person. No, it's just a dumb choice because you're choosing misery and death over life and happiness. You continue. The truth is, I'm forgetting that I'm loved and lovable even when I feel like this. That you'll love me even if I fall over every day. That you love me just as much when I'm feeling peaceful as when I'm feeling lost. That I am exactly where I need to be and that there's no other place I can be. Yep. So while I'm allowing myself to learn this time around, while I'm accepting what is, how do I stop myself from wallowing or feeling victim-y? And how do I stop resisting? How do I stop minding hearing the truth? There are 100 ways to do this. Read Real Love and Freedom for the Soul about victimhood. But to make a really short answer, because there's lots of them, stop thinking. Listen to all that you said in this email. Think, round and round and round, and lots of words. The more words we use, it's kind of a clue, the more thinking that we're doing. Quit it. Instead of doing all that thinking, it's pretty much impossible to just stop thinking, but you can replace your thoughts with more productive ones, with simpler ones, with truer ones. Go through the 5 truths, surely everybody's heard them by now, and mean them 100 times a day. My daddy loves me, God loves me, I'm never alone, so I have everything I'll need and nothing to fear. So I'm grateful. 100 times a day. You pretty much can't say those things and mean them and be afraid at the same time. You can't. You either have to not mean them or you have to forget them and not say them, and then you can pick up the fear. It's everywhere, so it's easy to find a bucket of it. It's how you feel that will change things for you. And those really simple truths will help you to regain the feeling of being loved. Here's a man who says, my 11-year-old granddaughter plays soccer. When she gets injured, and injured is in quotes, She falls to the ground and doesn't move until the coach assists her off the field in tears. 11 years old and has mastered victimhood. My son, her father, ridicules her as she walks past the bench with things like, "Shake it off, don't be a big baby." Oh, the cycles we live in. He pointed out to me that she's flopping. It's a term used often in athletics, particularly in basketball. Somebody's going in to make a basket, and the person who is in the way, who didn't get their feet planted so they could get a charging foul, flops to the floor like they were really hit hard, and then often the other person will get called for a foul. So flopping is another way of saying acting. Flopping to get out of the game if she's tired or if they're losing. Last week I sat with her and talked until she went back in. I think I'm loving her, but am I interfering with my son's parenting? So first let's talk about the flopping, her falling to the ground. I don't know her, but so I can't say this definitively, but I can describe some of the more likely options. It's very likely that she's either A, trying to get out of the game because she doesn't want to be there. It's just that simple. So you're in a game where your father never says anything nice to you if you do something well. When you come out of the game, your father never says to you, "Well, did you have a good time?" Where it's just fun to be out there. No, you're in a game where all you can do, think about the world kids live in. This is the world kids live in school too. In class, the teacher says, "Who knows the answer to this question?" And there are 35 kids in the class, and 2 kids raise their hand. Why is that? It's not because only 2 kids know the answer, because the other 35 kids are going, "I ain't going to take the chance. I mean, look at the rewards. If I get the answer right, she just moves on and asks me another dang question that I'm going to get wrong. But if I get the answer wrong, I'm going to look like a moron. She's going to laugh at me, ridicule me. The other kids are going to laugh." Nope. The rewards of doing something right aren't nearly as deeply felt as the penalties for doing something wrong. Or as the old sports announcer, what was his name? It'll come to me in a minute, said, "Losing feels worse than winning feels good." So here's this little girl out there on the soccer field, and she's going, "I don't get anything for having fun out here. There's no intrinsic fun. I get accused of being a baby. People tell me to run here, run there, don't do this. Or I could just fall down and act like I've been killed and get carried off in a stretcher, and I don't have to play." See? So she just gets out of the game. That's one reason that she'd be doing it. I would kind of vote for that one. B, she could just be trying to get attention. She doesn't get attention in any other way, and already at 11, she's learning to be a victim. I watch kids do this all the time. You can watch 2-year-old kids do this trick. They're running across the floor, they trip and fall as toddlers do, and they slap their hands on the hard floor, and what's the first thing the kid does? Almost invariably. Slaps her hand on the floor and then looks around to see if anybody noticed. And if nobody noticed, because I've watched them do this, like from around a corner, they just get up and run on. If they catch their mother's eye and the mother goes, then the kid screams, and I'm going, I want to say to the mom, "You're such a sucker." So to get attention, or C, both. She wants to get attention and get out of the game. Double scoop of victim ice cream. So now, about your talking to her. Is it interfering with his parenting? It depends on what you say. You could ask her, for example, "Hey, are you enjoying the game?" Nothing wrong with that. Ask her what she likes about soccer. You could ask her what she likes about the game, and then you could ask her what she likes about getting out of the game. You could even say, "So why do you lie on the field as opposed to getting up and walking off?" Emphasizing that you don't care. You say, "I don't care. I was just wondering if you know why." I can't tell you how often I've talked to kids who are 11 and way younger, who if you ask them and you don't already have the answer in your head, you're not going to make them wrong, they'll tell you the answer. Whereas if you've already got an answer in your head and you're going to make them wrong, oh, they'll never answer your question. Which is why the most common answer that kids give to questions that parents ask is what? I don't know. Or nothing. What'd you do at school? Nothing. Well, did you go to school today? I don't know. Well, did you sit in class all day? Yeah. Did you learn anything? No. They don't want to answer your stupid questions because you already have a preconceived answer. They're going to get it wrong, and so they don't want to play this game. But you can't say to her that her father is being unloving, even though he is. That would undermine his parenting. You can ask her how she feels when he talks to her and says, don't be a big baby, but you can't then say, well, he's being a terrible parent because I taught him to be. Your son's probably not ready for you to teach her those lessons yet. Next question from a member. I'm working with a friend, Cynthia, and I'm helping her to learn real love. She's in the same situation I was in with my ex-husband. Lots of abuse, verbal and physical on the kids, lots of confusion and anxiety. We're working on, I don't know, it's an acronym for a program for the church, which has helped her see her codependency and see her behavior. She's reading the Real Love and Marriage book. And when we met last night, she was very confused about where the line is. This is something I struggled with too, so I want to get your input. She said she recognizes that she needs to allow her husband his choices. That's clear. But what about when he hits one of the children? The sentence wasn't clear to me. Is that the time when she steps in and calls the police so that he can have the natural consequences for his actions? I guess that's the line she's talking about. Well, he's got to be allowed his own choices. The husband does. But see, you're allowed to make your choices only when you're willing to pay the consequences. See? So you want to drive too fast? No problem. They give you a ticket and they send you on your way and they don't even care if you speed again. Really? The cop, in fact, sometimes will just follow you and give you another ticket. He can do that with you all day long. But you don't get to make choices where other people pay the consequences of your choices. So, for example, I don't get to practice shooting my assault rifle here in the neighborhood at the neighbors' windows just because I think it'd be really fun. And I do. I think it would be really fun to break their windows. Because it turns out that there could be consequences like, people would die and windows would break and stuff. And oddly, that my neighbors wouldn't find that very funny. So I don't get to do stuff where other people pay for what I do. In this case, he makes choices where his children pay the consequences. He hits a child, they suffer. That's wrong. That's just by definition wrong. And if she doesn't protect the kids, they certainly can't. So here's what she really needs to do. I mean, you can't make her, but you can at least be confident in describing this to her. She's got to talk to him. And she's got to talk to him like now, to tell him that the next time he hits someone, she needs to warn him. She'll report him to the police. Now, that may sound harsh. I'll tell you why it's not in a minute. And you hope that that will wake him up, but very often it doesn't. The very next time he hits a kid, she has to call the cops. Not warn him. No, she's already warned him. You don't warn somebody 3 times, then they think you're a joke. No, you warn them once. It has to stop. Do you have any idea how easy it is to kill a child with an unintentionally hard shove? It's shockingly easy. I worked in emergency rooms and I saw kids killed with a dad slapping his kid, not unusually hard, a young child, but he caught the kid with his class ring and fractured the skull. The kid got a subdural hematoma and and killed the child. Or another dad who was holding the child and was trying to get him to be quiet. Now, he didn't hit the kid, but what he did was he was angry And because he was angry, he was hurrying from one room to the other. Doesn't sound like a dangerous thing, except that anybody with kids who are like 2 and under knows that kids do this little magical thing when they just go and they rear back with their head, which sometimes gives you a broken nose, sometimes throws them off your lap onto the floor. In this guy's case, because he was running through a doorway, it smacked the kid's head against the doorway and killed the kid. So we only outweigh them, you know, in some cases 10 to 1. You don't get to hit your kids, ever. I don't know if I've ever told this story publicly, but I can still remember once when I got angry at one of my kids, don't remember which kid, but, you know, had gotten in and out of bed a million times, and I was tired of it, and I grabbed this kid, and I took him to the door of his bedroom, and this all happened in about a microsecond, or at least that's what it felt like to me. And so in order to facilitate his arriving at his bed, I threw him from the doorway to his bed, which was, about 10 feet. So as he's arcing through the air, it seems funny only in retrospect, as he's arcing through the air, it occurred to me that there was a rail on the side of his bed, and that if he hit his head on the railing, that there would be a problem. Fortunately, he landed nicely on his pillow, was sufficiently scared to stay in bed, and fell asleep. Of course, the child probably still has nightmares at 35. I could easily have killed that kid. You can't hit kids. It's just potentially too deadly. You continue. From what she tells me, he's very violent, has beaten the children severely and left them bruised before. Yeah, it just emphasizes what I just said. You got to take action like right now. Later on, it's just way too late to go, you know, I could see this coming. I really should have done something. It's really too late when you're walking past the kid's casket. I got a call from a man who has known great pain in his life. Now, who hasn't? We've all had tons, buckets, truckloads of pain, but this man, an unusual amount. Really been trying, but he struggles to feel love. He lives in his head, which is understandable. If you've never had anything but bad feelings, well, then you move to your head, which is occupied by thoughts. And you kind of make a construct of a life, kind of like a virtual reality. So he called me and he said, "How are you?" I have no idea what prompted me to say this, but I said, "You know, perfect. My life is perfect." I said, "Do you know why?" He said, "Well, no." And so I said, "Because I trust that people love me. I trust that God loves me. I have everything I need and nothing to be afraid of. And I'm grateful. The same 5 truths I suggest to everybody else." So I said, "Try saying this after me." Now, this is a man who just makes Eeyore look like sunshine's coming out of his ears. I said, "Say this, word for word. I am so happy." He said, "I'm so happy." I said, "No, those two didn't sound similar at all." So we kept practicing till he went, "I am so happy." That took us quite a while. Then we continued. I said, "Because right now you are loving me." So he said, "I am so happy because right now you are loving me." And I said, "Right now you are smiling, aren't you?" He said, "Yes." We were driving somewhere, Donna and I told her about this, and she started smiling. It made her smile just to hear the story. So the next day, I said, "How are you doing?" He said, without any prompting, and this is not a guy you could get to say something so that you'd like him. He either means it or he doesn't. Let me tell you, his gloom wasn't pretend. He said, "You know, I'm having a good day." He said, "I'm talking to my dad and I'm feeling great." That was impressive. He meant it. He said, I still have a strong need to please people. He said, sometimes I try to please you too, just so I'll get more attention. I said, of course you do. Nearly all humans please the people around them to get more attention. So what would it be like, I said, if you didn't need to please me? What would you say? There was complete silence because he didn't know what to say. I waited, still silent. I finally said, exactly. You got it. Nothing. You'd say nothing. He said, whoa, that'd be a great way to live. If we all didn't try to be something or to do something, imagine what it would be like. He said, well, what if we were just ourselves? It would all work out better that way, don't you think? Remember, this is the guy who 24 hours before made Eeyore look like a cruise director. Yeah, the world really would be better if we didn't try. It takes all the work out of it. Makes it just kind of effortless and fun. So then he said, so what's the most important thing I could do now? Not just to feel loved, but to be more loving. Already he's gone in 24 hours from, Eeyore to how do I become Gandhi? And I said, just this. Just sit. Just put your head on my shoulder. Now, mind you, we're 1,000 miles apart. And just be there. Just feel it. And when you get enough of that, you will figure out the next step. So this little interaction with this one guy addresses the questions that, almost all of us have. It was a really fun conversation for me. Is there a rule of thumb, says a member, for how much you tell your kids about yourself at what age? For instance, you clearly told your children about your addiction at some point. How old did they have to be? Would I tell mine about my suicide attempts, for example? When would that be appropriate? You kind of watch kids and see what they get. If you want to watch what kids understand, now my children wouldn't recommend this because they really hated it when I did it when they were kids, but we couldn't watch a movie for more than 10 or 15 minutes. And somehow I always ended up with the remote control. I don't know. Who knows? Actually, it's keyed to my fingerprints. And so I would pause whatever movie we were watching, and I would ask them questions. You want to teach your kids cool stuff? You don't stop them in the middle of what they're doing. Stop them in the middle of a movie and say, so tell me the lesson you just learned from that actor, character, person, whatever it is, what they did. There are lessons every 5 minutes in a movie. And so you see drug addiction, stop. Ask them to describe what they're seeing. Drug addiction. Ask them to describe why people are drug addicts. Then you teach them lessons on why people are addicts and what emptiness and fear is and why they use it to dull their pain, blah, blah. There are lessons everywhere in watching movies. I loved watching movies with my kids, and they did too. They just kind of wished I wouldn't hit pause quite so often. But you'll learn as you do this, or in reading books, whether your children understand drug addiction. Once they do, then you can tell them about yours. There's no sense telling a 4-year-old about your drug addiction. They don't even know what you're talking about. But usually by the time they're 8 to 10 years old, they understand drug addiction pretty well. So it's a good time to tell them. Sexual infidelity. You say, there was a time years ago when I was not faithful and slept with somebody other than your mother, and we almost got divorced, and maybe a little older than 8 to 10. You don't have to give them details. You just say there was inappropriate touching and closeness with somebody other than, whether it's their mother, your wife, whoever. I promise you, no kid wants to hear the sexual details of anything about your life. That's just a real buzzkill, let me tell you. Next time you're having sex, picture your parents if you just want to just kill the moment. Suicide attempts. Pretty much the same age. But again, ask them questions about it. Every kid has had a bad day. Every kid. Where things just went wrong and they whined and kicked and fussed at people and just hated life and they hated everybody. And if they can't think of a bad day, I'll bet you can remind them of one within the last week or so. So tell them to imagine a bad day that never ends. And then say, that's how I was feeling. And years ago, I got to a place where I wanted to just blow my brains out. You explain it just really calmly. Don't do it with tears and lots of emotion and drama. They don't know what to do when a parent becomes all dramatic and emotional. They just feel obligated to take care of you emotionally. And that just screws everything up. That's not what you want. So why tell them any of these things at all? Why tell them about your drug addiction or your suicide attempts or whatever? Because if you don't, it's pretty likely, unless the person you were unfaithful with lived in Antarctica and was swallowed up in an ice crevasse, eventually they're going to learn about it. And they're going to come at you with fire coming out of their eyes, wanting to know how come you didn't trust them enough to tell them. So if you've had major events like that in your life, it can also become an enormous trust builder with your kids and create moments of where they feel trusted by you. Here's an email from a woman who said, a man on a dating site asked me out to lunch. Turns out he's the recent ex-husband of a good friend, Mary, who I see regularly. I explained to him by email that Mary and I are good friends. And he thanked me for being so honest, and he said he was embarrassed by this. Don't know why, but that's what you said. I immediately told Mary, my friend, about the email exchange, and she thanked me for letting her know. Now, here's the question. Should I ask Mary if she'd mind if I meet her ex-husband for coffee or for lunch? Second question. Even if she says yes, is this really a good idea to go on a date with a good friend's ex-husband? So, yes, it's all right if you date him, and no, you don't have to ask her. You already told her about the invitation from him. She's a big girl. If she'd had a negative opinion, she could have told you, but she didn't. She just thanked you for telling her. And he's her ex-husband, so she has no say in the matter at all. None. Will it affect your relationship with your friend? Don't know, but that's up to her, not you. You can't control it. I mean, if everything that we do, we have to go, ooh, is there somebody who's not going to like this? That's the paralysis that most people live in. Not worth it. So go ahead and see the guy. But just keep your head on. Within a few dates, you two would benefit from reading the dating book together, which I would say to any two people who are dating. Focus on you and the guy. Your girlfriend is a peripheral issue, and you don't really have to be concerned about that. If your dating him bothers her, then she needs to do her own work around that. A year ago, I'm going to figure out in a minute why I have an email from somebody a year ago. I got an email from Sarah. She said, oh, now I remember why. She said, I want to tell you about my nephew, Benjamin. Last night, my brother, Benjamin's father, which is why he's my nephew, called and told me that he had a huge argument with Benjamin, my nephew, and he told Benjamin to go commit suicide. So, to get the picture right, this person who's writing is hearing from her brother, who's telling her that he just told his own son to go kill himself, that he should have been aborted, and that nobody loved him. I was overwhelmed with fear for Ben, because before this terrible thing happened, he was already angry, fearful, and depressed. His father is back on drugs. I was panicked, but then I talked to some real love people, and I remembered how simple this all really is. Bless your heart. This is cool. It's huge to remember this. It's never complicated. And when you remember that, there's not a panic. You continue. I texted Benjamin, the son, who had just been told by his father he should have been aborted, to see if he was okay. And his response was, I'm okay. He's just crazy, meaning his father. Is this cool or what? Children, their parents absolutely determine how children see the world. Parents are God to their children. So it's amazing that this child, Ben, could see his parent in this way, that he could see that his parent was not God, but then not turn him into a monster, just say, he's just crazy. That could only happen as a result of two things. First, your love for him, the person who's writing this email to me a year ago, so that he knows what it is and isn't fooled by what his father has been doing all these years. And two, he has the confidence, which follows from your loving him, to see his father's craziness instead of feeling worthless himself. Again, you. It's a miracle that this kid could see his father as damaged instead of seeing himself as worthless. You continue. I hope he really sees it this way. Anyway, when he came to a seminar with you, this was a year ago, it seemed to really make a difference. Can't say for sure if he will grab the rope, but I feel more peaceful knowing that I had a rope to offer. It's so ironic how you talk about parents sending the message, I don't love you, but some kids get this message literally in black and white. Yeah, when you tell a kid, go kill yourself and I wish you'd been aborted, that's pretty black and white. So I wrote back at the time and said, please tell him I'd be happy to talk to him anytime. He's got to have somebody to talk to. And you are very possibly all he needs, but I'm here if he wants. Even to visit here if he wants. Just have him remind me that he's your nephew and I'll remember him. So then I get an email from this same person last month, just 3 weeks ago. She says this. I had the most amazing conversation with my nephew, Benjamin, by Facebook chat on Sunday. Nothing short of miraculous if you had any idea how angry this boy has been. I am not fooling myself into believing that his anger is a thing of the past. I know it's not, but this is progress and I'm so happy for him. Last year when I saw a photo on the news of the mass killer, Adam, I don't know how to pronounce this last name because I don't watch the news, Lanza, the Sandy Hook kid, it struck me how similar his facial expression was to that of my nephew in a photo he'd been using as a profile picture at the time. It was a look of pain, despair, and confusion. At the recent seminar, you mentioned the Edvard Munch, Norwegians pronounce things pretty strange, Edvard Munch painting, The Scream, and I'd say that it was pretty much like that, but with a closed mouth, muted terror and despair. It prompted me to invite him to attend the Phoenix seminar last year with me. It is a measure of our blindness as individuals and as a society that we are surprised by things like Sandy Hook and Columbine and all those things. These kids didn't just suddenly spring out of a carbuncle on somebody's back. They'd been developed for decades. Gradually, steadily, consistently developed. They shouldn't be a surprise, but they are because we're not even looking at them. Parents don't even look at their kids. Teachers don't look at their students. We see them as something to be fixed. We see them as tasks to be accomplished. We don't see who they really are. When Columbine happened, I wrote, Georgia has 179, I think, school districts, 179 counties. And I wrote all 179 school districts in Georgia and said, would you like to prevent Columbine from happening in your school district? I'd be happy to come down and teach you about real love and parenting, teach your teachers, teach your parents, teach the administrators, teach the kids, and I'll do it for nothing. 179 letters. How many responses did I get? 0. Because that wouldn't really affect their test scores. See? We say we love our children. No, we really don't. And we prove it with our behavior. This kid had been brewing for years and years and years. And nobody was paying attention to these looks on his face and to his behaviors. Every one of these kids who do these things, people go, how could this happen? He grew up in a normal home. You know what they mean by that? They mean that he grew up in a home where he wasn't sexually abused, where he wasn't thrown down basement stairs or kept in a closet for 10 years. He wasn't found torturing squirrels before this happened. And so if those things didn't happen, then he grew up in a normal home. No, because I've read interviews later with parents and family members and neighbors and so on, and they never come from loving homes. So not a surprise. You continue. I've always had fears of what my nephew might do in his pain and anger. Yeah, no kidding. Any one of these kids can blow up on any given day. And that fear is not based on some photos, but knowing his life and remembering his words. One of the first complete sentences he uttered as a baby was, "Go away." It's what his mom often said to him, and it became how he greeted people as a toddler. In a letter he wrote to me in 2011, he said, "You are the only thing keeping me from killing every blank blank around me." And that's how a lot of kids feel. It demonstrates the power of your love for him. What a difference you are in his life. Just one person who loves him, and you're not his mother or his father. Just takes one person to make all the difference. You listen to success stories of people who aren't just successful in making money, but people who've made a difference in the world. And as they tell their life stories, almost without exception, they describe some one person who cared about them. Some one teacher, one grandparent, one aunt, one somebody who showed them the light, who showed them that the world could be something other than painful and hateful and horrible and unloving. Here are some excerpts. She continues in her email from a month ago. 3-4 weeks ago. The conversation we had on Sunday. Benjamin said, "I find it hard to get angry anymore," as weird as that sounds. Is that cool or what? You said, "That's pretty darn awesome. What changed you?" Benjamin, "I don't know." Or as it says here, kids say, IDK. Just seeing how much everybody cared and helped me. And I don't feel alone. I have a good family, something to live for, and I feel loved. Now, he was talking about the lady who's sending me this email. He was not talking about his father. Benjamin continued, "I never feel as comfortable and okay as when I talk to you." That's his aunt, the one who's writing me this. "I think if everybody had an aunt like you, they wouldn't be unhappy." Is that just about the coolest thing you ever heard? If everybody had an aunt like this, or fill in the blank, if everybody had a friend, if everybody had an uncle, a father, a mother, a brother, just somebody who really cared about them, which might very well be you who are watching this right now, then they wouldn't be unhappy. She said, "Well, that's the nicest thing I've ever heard." He said, "Well, it's the truth." She said, "I often think about how much I failed you guys when your mom died. I was drowning. I was overwhelmed with my mom being sick and my life, and couldn't do what I wanted, which was to take all three of you and get a place and have a simple, organized life." Benjamin said, "Me and my brother talk all the time about how grateful we are for what you did for us. You did everything perfect." She says, "I'm amazed. As I went back and reread our conversation, I saw that Benjamin basically stated the essence of the 5 truths you speak of. Knowing that you're loved, acknowledging that you're not alone, being grateful, the keys to happiness." And the kid came up with them all by himself. Yeah, intuitively we know what works. But if we've never seen it, how can we articulate it? And if we can't articulate it, how can we consistently reproduce it, find it? She continues, "I wasn't sure what he got out of the seminar last year. He's not much of a talker, often just broods, but he's a keen listener, very intuitive and sensitive. He felt people trying to reach out to him. He didn't seem at the time to budge an inch, but I know seeds have been planted. I can only water them best I can when my bucket is full enough, but I'm getting better at it. Imperfect love is all we can give one another, but even a little of that can be the difference between life and death for some people. I know Benjamin sometimes still gets angry, but it's being extinguished by degrees. Oh, I love that phrase, extinguished by degrees. What a great story. Here's a kid who had every indication of turning out like one of these multiple murderers, but his aunt loved him, and he didn't. I know a woman who's been supremely unhappy for decades. Then she took a giant leap of faith, and she trusted being loved. She wrote, "I am amazed again, endlessly apparently. There's no end to my amazement. I'm filled with gratitude. It seems like there's no ceiling on gratitude or love. Yesterday I wrote you, and afterward I wondered if I'd said it right or if I'd used too many words. And then I realized, who cares? I know you love me anyway. How cool is that? I don't live in self-doubt anymore." This is huge. You're learning to lead an entirely different life. You'll always make mistakes, but they don't throw you into the ditch anymore. And that's an enormous difference. You continue. "I finally get it that I can actually enjoy life." What a concept. How does that feel? I'm blaming less. I'm clinging to be right less. And here's the biggie. I know what it feels like to trust that I'm loved and to feel loved. So when anything comes up that might have confused or scared me before, I know that the fear will just pass. It's like getting gifts every day, deeper all the time. Yep. You continue. The other day I said something to my husband that he had said, doesn't matter. Anyway, he didn't agree. In the past, I would have argued and, I said something to my husband that you had said, meaning me, and he didn't agree. In the past, I would have argued and defended you, and I would have been irritated. Not now, just didn't matter. I know what I know. I know who I am. And my husband gets to learn this or not learn this at whatever rate he chooses. Don't miss this, honey. Just your simple expression of what you used to do, the arguing, the defending, and all that stuff is huge. Every day you wake up a little more. You're seeing what you do and what you have done. And frankly, that's as cool as it gets. That's the secret. Awareness. I talk about it more and more all the time. You don't have to be afraid of making a mistake. You don't have to criticize yourself. You don't have to be hyper conscious or hyper vigilant. Just aware. And then change just tends to follow. You continue. I'm not afraid of my fears or other people's disapproval anymore. In fact, now I see my old behaviors as, well, cute. A word you taught me, meaning me. Even laughable, another word you taught me. Just as fun, I'm seeing other people's behaviors as cute too, instead of irritating. When we're majorly screwing up, in retrospect, our behavior really is pretty crazy looking. And when we get that, eventually we can laugh at it. So, example, my grandchildren have mimicked my behavior. When I'm out cutting wood with a chainsaw, they'll come in the house and they'll mimic my behavior by trying to cut wood into logs, by moving their hands really fast on the wood and making high-pitched noises like a chainsaw. Now, are they retarded and stupid? And do I criticize and tell them that if they move their hands really fast, they can't cut the wood? No, it's cute. We laugh. Are we mocking them? No, just laughing at how ridiculous it looks for an adult who knows how wood is really cut. Like when I was a kid and I found fool's gold on the side of the road at an old copper mine. It's big crystals of iron pyrite that look a lot like gold nuggets, except that well, they're in perfect little square crystals. And I would take them home and put them in my drawer, and then in the morning rush over to my drawer and see if they'd maybe turned into gold nuggets. Stupid, yeah, but in retrospect, I look back and go, that's kind of cute. Our stupid behaviors really do look cute once we know better. You continue. We're utterly darling even when we're screwing up, which is why I laugh sometimes when we're really stupid. It's a reflection of our individuality, even in pain. It's cute. People have asked me what real love has done for me, and I think I can answer that now. 1, it's given me laughter. Buckets of it. More like oceans of it. 2, life is to be enjoyed. No beatings are necessary. 3, we're all really cute. And real love has given me connection. I love connecting with anybody and everybody. If the devil himself came to visit, actually she said, if the devil himself came to visit in drag, what would make her think the devil would come in drag? I would love to connect because I'm not afraid. When fear is not here, what's left is love. Anyway, back to my point. I was afraid of people. I hated going places. Now, nobody scares me. Nobody. You know what did it? You loved me enough to get me through the lies, the pain, and my being pretty angry and snotty. And just sort of parenthetically, yes, you really could be angry and snotty. No matter what I did, you weren't scared of me one bit. You couldn't have been, or it wouldn't have worked. A big hug, and thank you for loving me when I needed it. My privilege and a joy. And for those who are listening, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Any of the rest of you could have done this, and I get letters or I hear secondhand stories like this where those of you who are watching right now have done this same thing with other people. You continue. I'm astounded at my life. It's filled with love and faith. It's a party. This is bigger than I ever would have thought possible or could have imagined or wished for. I feel like I'm on ecstasy, but without the chemicals. I just had to be willing to give up all the lies. It feels like I finally found a home. And it really is. It's a miracle. So we've only got like a minute left. So next week we're going to answer some more questions from members. I can't tell you how much I enjoy your questions, so please keep sending them. Fun to get your questions, fun to go over the answers. But as I've said before, don't get stuck in the words. Don't get stuck in the answers. What matters most is how you feel. I love you. Feel that. See you in a week.